to bring in legal practitioner and foreign affairs commentator Sonny Ekwehusi to discuss this. Thank you, Sonny, for joining me on the program today. What are we learning, from the Myanmar junta with the executions and how terrifying the future of Myanmar is?
Well, thank you very much. It is what is happening in Myanmar is really very tragic. It is barbaric, and it has become condemned by the international community. And I would say that the international community should ensure that the atrocities in Myanmar does not continue. First of all, we are seeing the sanctions being applied, but the sanctions, I'm afraid, are not going to stop the atrocity being committed, because the junta has insisting that the foreign leaders should not interfere in the atrocities going on in Myanmar. But I would suggest that the United Nations and members of the international community should take every necessary step to ensure that the killings in Myanmar does not continue. It is a setback on the civilized world. This is the first execution we are having since 1988. And it does not take good for that country, the country of 54 million. It does not take good for the world. It does not take good for United Nations. It does not take good for United States. Unfortunately, the United States does not recognize Myanmar. I'm afraid whether they will really step in. So I will advise that the international, as we are seeing the killings, where first of all, the trial was a secret trial. They were not represented by legal practitioners, and they were condemned unjustly and killed unjustly. Some of the relatives are asking for the ashes of those killed, just to make them to remember or to bury the ashes. And the junta is not relenting. So I would suggest that the international community should ensure that the killings does not continue, because many other people are still being held under the iron grip of the junta. And the care is not taking, more executions to be carried out. So in order to stop further execution, I would advise that members of the international community should do everything possible. Sanctions are not working, because since sanctions have been applied, but the killings are still going on.
Do you think, there was already a projection towards this? I mean, the junta clearly was not going to take any opposition to its government when it toppled the leadership of Aung San Suu Kyi and had her and other pro-democracy activists arrested. It was clear that they were not going to stand, tolerate any opposition to its government. And those protests have been going on for months now. They also have not tolerated them. People have died, in the protests, and they haven't cared, despite the condemnation from the international community. Is it really a surprise that the junta would be carrying out these executions?
Well, I think that unfortunately they will carry out more executions, because they have said that they're not going to listen to any person from the international community trying to advise them. So they are unrelenting, and they will carry out more executions, because as far as they are concerned, the trial was very fair, and also the execution is also fair. Members of the Amnesty International are saying that death penalty is not is no longer tolerated in these days. But the junta still believes that death penalty is the only solution. I think it's a big unleashing that they are doing in that country.
Yeah, but hold on, Sonny. I'm trying to establish, that the junta already had a projection towards this. I mean, here they were fighting, these protesters. You have police on the streets, beating people up, sometimes shooting into the crowds, firing water cannons, arresting people. Is it really a surprise that executions have taken place?
Yeah, that's why I'm very surprised. I'm surprised because if this is happening and execution is taking place, I mean, it means that the junta is quite unrelenting. I would suggest that rather than mere condemnation. The international community is to take steps, if possible, because dialogue has been tried in the past, it did not work. So I would suggest that they should take steps, even if it means entering Niamey, to ensure that the killings will continue. Same as there's no remedy, and they are killing and maiming and arresting anybody who is in opposition. I think the international community should find a way of entering the country and seeing what can be done in terms of bringing peace and normalcy to that country.
How are they supposed to do this? I mean, when you talk about the international community, I suppose you're talking about the global bodies, the UN, the ICC, probably the World Court, but you also have countries like China, which are egging on the Myanmar junta.
China is not saying anything because we know very well that similar executions are taking place in China, but China will not do anything because China is guilty of the same thing. I'm suggesting it's just what is happening in Russia and Ukraine also taking place in Myanmar at the same time, where you have a country, might is becoming right, a country that is being taken over by junta, and the United Nations is helpless to do anything. It's the kind of world that we find ourselves that United Nations does not have a way of reading the words of this junta and so on and so forth. And even the so-called powerful nations also cannot even help anybody. Exactly what is happening between Russia and Ukraine is also happening in Myanmar. I think that there have to be a way. I mean, if it has to be through illegal means, of course, you can do that because the junta is not going to accept any other thing. They are going ahead. They're going to kill more people. They have even arrested a former Nobel laureate for peace and a pro-democracy activist is under arrest. And I won't be surprised if she's executed anytime from now. I think there should be a way of entering that country and stopping what is happening. It might not be through legal means, but anyway, that this is a very extraordinary situation. And I think a extraordinary solution should be applied in a way of trying to stop the killings going on in that country.
Sonny Ekwewusi, thank you so much for speaking with us on the program.
Yes, thanks a lot.